Pull out your last 3 gas receipts. Look at the total. Then do the one thing most drivers never stop to do. Divide what you paid by how many miles you actually got. And what shows up there is not what the window sticker promised you. Not even close. The gap between what your engine should be burning and what it actually burns is not some mystery buried in bad traffic, weather, or age. It is engineered into the fuel before that fuel ever reaches your tank. The fuel industry, and the political machine built around it, systematically stripped combustion efficiency away from ordinary drivers. Not through mechanical failure, through the fuel itself. Every single year, American drivers collectively spend more than $60 billion on fuel that does less work than it should. Per driver, that comes out to roughly $800 to $1,200 in wasted combustion every year, depending on how much you drive. And the people who built this system have been collecting that waste as profit since 2005. Today we are putting the 30% fuel trap on trial, what it is, who built it, and how to claw back the efficiency they buried. Every gallon of gasoline you buy today contains up to 10% ethanol by volume. That is not a conspiracy, that is federal law. And ethanol carries roughly 30% less energy per gallon than pure gasoline. Let that sink in. The fuel you are buying has been legally diluted with a substance that contains dramatically less combustion energy than the product it replaced. You are paying for a gallon of gasoline and receiving something closer to 0.9U3 gallon of gasoline and 0.07 gallon of corn. And that is before we even get to what happens inside your engine. Take a 2019 Ford F-150 with the 5.0-liter V8, EPA rated at 15 city and 21 highway. At the pump today, running E10 fuel, real-world owners consistently report 12 to 14 miles per gallon in mixed driving, not because of the engine, not because of the driver, but because of what is in the fuel. The same engine on pure gasoline gets the numbers on the sticker. On E10, it does not. The sticker was written for a fuel that barely exists anymore. Now look at a 2021 Honda Civic with the 1.5-liter turbo, one of the most fuel-efficient engines Honda has ever built. EPA rated at 32 city and 42 highway. Owners running E10 fuel report a consistent 3 to 5 miles per gallon shortfall versus the EPA numbers on a 13-gallon tank. That is nearly half a gallon of efficiency gone per fill-up. Over a year of 15,000 miles, that adds up to roughly $250 in fuel you bought but your engine could not fully use. And that is just the ethanol cut. Because then comes the second layer, and this is where the trap gets uglier. After 50,000 miles of running E10, your injectors begin paying the price. Ethanol is a solvent. It scours fuel system components. It degrades rubber seals. It carries water into the fuel system, and that moisture helps create deposits inside your injectors. A clean injector produces a fine cone-shaped mist, the maximum surface area for combustion. A fouled injector does not mist properly. It streams. It dribbles. It throws fuel against the cylinder wall instead of letting it burn efficiently. Independent testing has measured injector flow loss of up to 20% at 80,000 miles on vehicles running standard E10 pump fuel with no fuel system maintenance. 20% on top of the energy deficit already built into the fuel. Now put the numbers together. 3 to 7% lost from ethanol dilution, 10 to 20% lost from injector degradation that ethanol accelerates. But the real punchline is this: you are now sitting comfortably inside the 30% fuel trap. And the people who sold you that fuel knew exactly what would happen long before the first mandate was signed. So who decided this was acceptable? The answer runs straight through corn. But really, ethanol is only the visible markup. The deeper revenue model spreads through every sector this arrangement touches. And it does not require your fuel efficiency to matter at all, as long as you keep buying more fuel to go the same distance. The United States ethanol industry alone generates more than $50 billion in annual revenue. The corn lobby feeding it controls one of the most heavily funded lobbying operations in Washington. Behind that sits a second industry cashing in just as hard: the automotive service industry. Dealerships charge $150 to $350 for a fuel system service that often uses the same active ingredient as a $12 bottle from the auto parts store. The injector cleaning market alone generates roughly $4.5 billion per year. That is not a maintenance business. That is a consequence business. They profit from the degradation built into your fuel supply. Then there is a third actor most people never notice: the refinery lobby. When the government mandated ethanol as an oxygenate, it removed pressure from refiners to develop more sophisticated fuel formulations with stronger detergent packages. The cheapest legal fuel could now be shipped to the stations operating on the thinnest margins. Those are the stations most people stop at. The stations competing on price, the stations selling the minimum detergent package allowed by law. And that really is the architecture. The system requires your injectors to degrade. It requires you to burn more fuel to travel the same distance. And it has 3 separate industries collecting revenue from that degradation at the same time. This is not inefficiency. This is design. Go back to 1990. The Clean Air Act amendments pass in the United States. One provision requires the use of oxygenates in reformulated gasoline in cities with the worst air quality. Oxygenates are compounds that add oxygen to the fuel mixture, theoretically improving combustion and reducing carbon monoxide emissions. On paper, it sounds reasonable, it sounds scientific. But there were 2 oxygenate candidates on the table. One was MTBE, a petroleum-derived compound refiners could manufacture and control internally. The other was ethanol, a corn-derived compound backed by one of the most powerful agricultural lobbies in American history. By 1992, the ethanol mandate was law in targeted regions. By 1995, it was spreading. And then, in 2005, everything changed. The Energy Policy Act of 2005 created the Renewable Fuel Standard, a federal mandate requiring that a specific volume of renewable fuel be blended into the nation's gasoline supply every year. The target was 7.5 billion gallons of ethanol per year by 2012. The company that had spent nearly 2 decades pushing for that moment was Archer Daniels Midland, ADM, the largest corn processor in the world. A company that had spent more than $100 million in political contributions over the preceding 15 years. A company whose executives had already served federal prison time in the 1990s for a price-fixing conspiracy in the lysine market. And on the day that mandate was signed, every driver in America became a guaranteed customer for their product. Here is what was buried beneath all of that. In the mid-1990s, fuel detergency research was moving fast. Several major oil companies had already developed proprietary additive packages that demonstrably prevented injector fouling. Exactly the kind of fouling that E10 fuel accelerates. Chevron's Techron formulation showed measurable injector protection in independent testing. But the minimum detergency standards set by the EPA were never updated to match what the research had already proven was possible. The minimum stayed the minimum. The detergent-rich fuel stayed optional. But the real issue is this: making better fuel mandatory would have meant admitting that standard fuel was damaging your engine. That admission would have blown a hole straight through the system. Because you cannot keep selling a $200 injector cleaning service if people's injectors are not getting dirty in the first place. So that was the decision. The government mandated a fuel that reduces combustion efficiency, accelerates injector fouling, and builds a corn processing industry most drivers will never see and never question. Then dealerships built a service revenue stream on top of the damage. That decision was made in 2005, and every tank of gas bought since then has been paying the toll. That service appointment, where the advisor recommended a fuel system flush, was not just some routine maintenance suggestion. It was the 2005 Energy Policy Act collecting its invoice. That is what makes this story so unsettling. The inefficiency was not accidental. The maintenance cost was not accidental. The repeat visits, the flushes, the extra gallons burned, the invisible money drained from drivers year after year, none of it happened by chance. And yet, the industry could not fully bury the solution. It could only make sure most ordinary drivers never heard about it. Because the ethanol mandate could not kill combustion efficiency for everyone, fleet operators could not afford to ignore it. Commercial trucking companies could not afford to ignore it. Long-haul delivery fleets, municipal vehicle pools, operations that live and die by cost per mile, these people run the numbers too carefully to absorb a 30% hit and simply shrug. They fight back. They always have. Military vehicle specifications still reference fuel energy density as a performance variable. Professional racing series that run on street fuel use fuel analysis tools to identify the highest energy batches available at pump stations near race venues. These are not people who let the fuel trap run unchallenged. And the uncomfortable truth is that many of the techniques they use are available to every driver on the road right now. The first layer of resistance is top-tier gasoline. In 2004, 1 year before the ethanol mandate locked in permanently, BMW, General Motors, Honda, Toyota, Volkswagen, and Audi jointly established a fuel quality standard called top-tier detergent gasoline. The standard requires 5 times the detergent concentration of the EPA minimum. 5 times. That is not a tiny tweak. That is a completely different level of protection. Independent testing by AAA found that engines running top-tier fuel for 4,000 miles had 19 times fewer intake valve deposits than engines running minimum standard fuel over the same distance. 19 times fewer deposits at virtually the same pump price. Chevron, Shell, Costco, Mobil, they are on the top-tier list. Many of the budget stations people use every day are not. The list is publicly available, but most drivers have never seen it. And that silence is useful to the industry, because once you run the math, cheap fuel stops looking cheap. The cost difference between filling up at a top-tier station versus a non-top-tier station is typically $40 to $80 per year for the average driver. But the fuel system cleaning service the dealership will eventually recommend when your injectors are fouled costs $150 to $350 every 2 to 3 years. Stretch that across a 10-year ownership period, and you are looking at roughly $500 to $1,050 in cleaning services that top-tier fuel can largely make unnecessary, versus about $400 to $800 in marginally higher fuel cost over that same span. The math flips. It flips completely. Better fuel is cheaper than cheap fuel, but the system is betting that you never stop long enough to calculate it. Then comes the second layer of resistance. And this one is almost insulting in how simple it is. Fuel system maintenance that costs $8. A bottle of polyethylamine-based fuel injector cleaner, the same active compound used in professional fuel system services, costs about $8 to $15 at any auto parts store. Add it to a full tank every 5,000 miles. That is it. No tools. No dealership appointment, no $300 machine. Fleet operators running high-mileage commercial vehicles routinely include injector cleaner in formal maintenance schedules, not as a repair, but as prevention. Think about what that means. The dealership charges you $200 to clean what $8 of chemistry prevents from getting dirty. That is the whole game laid bare. That is the trap in its simplest form. And there is one more move, maybe the most revealing one of all. When the EPA issues fuel economy estimates, the testing is done with certification fuel, a standardized blend with 0 to minimal ethanol content. Your window sticker was earned on fuel that barely exists at the commercial pump anymore. That is why so many drivers keep feeling like something is off. Because something is off. The advertised efficiency and the real-world fuel in the tank are not speaking the same language. That gap was built into the system from the start. But ethanol-free premium gasoline does still exist. That is the part almost nobody tells you. You can still find it at boat marinas, small aircraft fuel suppliers, and select fuel retailers in California, Oregon, Washington, and several other states. Drivers who have compared E10 against ethanol-free fuel in the same vehicle under the same conditions consistently report a 4 to 8% improvement in measured fuel economy. That is not some tiny academic difference. On a driver spending $250 per month on fuel, that works out to roughly $10 to $20 back per month, or $120 to $240 per year. Real money, not theory, not marketing language. Money recovered simply by knowing where to fill up. And this is where the whole structure starts to look even uglier. Because if every driver understood that the fuel at the pump had been legally diluted by law to benefit a corn processing conglomerate, and if every driver also understood that a $12 bottle of chemistry can erase the service revenue dealerships depend on, then the ethanol lobby's $50 billion annual industry would run headfirst into the one thing it fears most: an informed consumer base. That is why this story matters. The fuel in your tank was deliberately made less efficient by an act of Congress. Then the service industry was built on top of the damage to make sure most drivers would never have a reason to ask why. You were not just sold weaker fuel. You were sold the consequences of that weaker fuel, over and over again. One tank, one flush, one service invoice at a time. Share this with the person who is about to pay $250 for a fuel system flush at the dealership. They deserve to know what that service is actually treating and who put the problem there in the first place. And once you step back, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The maintenance lie, the hidden menus, the oil scam, the coolant bypass, the power loss, the break-in cover-up, the fuel trap. Different stories on the surface, but the same architecture underneath. Keep the driver uninformed. Keep the costs fragmented. Keep the explanation buried. And above all, keep the money moving. But the real break in that system starts with something very simple. You run the numbers. You question the sticker. You choose better fuel. You use injector cleaner before the damage piles up. You learn where ethanol-free options still exist. And once you do that, but the truth is, the trap stops looking invisible. It starts looking cheap, predictable, almost pathetic. Because in the end, this entire machine depends on one assumption, that you will never look closely enough to see it. If this changed how you see the fuel in your tank, leave a comment and share your numbers. If you think more drivers should know, a like and subscribe helps keep these investigations moving.